First of all, thank you, Kumar, for accepting the invite. And you were one of the early leaders I spoke with on LinkedIn, and you were very open to be part of this journey and this particular force. So thank you so much. Happy to have you on board. Before we get started, let me quickly introduce you to the audience. So, hi everyone, welcome back to this event. We have yet another guest with us, Dr. Kumar Abhishek. I always heard Kumar as a second name, but this is very interesting. Like Kumar was the first name. He is the head of HR for Asia Pacific for S&P Global, working out of Singapore. I'm also happy to have him because he's an ex-Standard Chartered Bank person, and I was also an ex-SCB, so there is a lot of emotional connect over there. 2 decades of rich experience, and he puts it beautifully in his profile as 456, which is 4 industries, 5 countries, and 6 organizations. Amazing work up your sleeves, and he's somebody who truly believes in leadership, development of people. I could sense it when I had the first chat with him. And I'm calling this as a compliment here, Kumar, because I've worked with many HR, and you would also know there are many HRs who end up doing HR and training as just a second function, but I could sense that you see it as a very key important ingredient for people, and you are driving it in your organization. So the leadership elements today, we are very happy to have you on board. So welcome on board. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Rajiv. I mean, pleasure is entirely mine. The concept which you follow in the work which you are doing, that's close to my heart as well. So pleasure to join this session.
Lovely, lovely, super. So let me get started with the first question, which I thought was very interesting for me to send you was, how and when did books happen to you?
That's quite an interesting story in by itself. Generally, books happen first to people and then libraries.
Right.
In my case, it was the opposite. I was part of a Jesuit school and was very kind of active in sports and competitive sports for that matter. And whenever I used to pass by the school library, which was huge, I used to get pretty kind of attracted by the serenity, the calm, the poise which that entire library used to give. And it was very different from, I would say, my school or sports field. And that's how I kind of got into library, exploring library first, and then ended up exploring book. And the love of library and the smell of book stays forever.
Lovely. And how early was this? What age were you in?
So I was like 8, 9 years old. Was in my school, and that's how we ended up. And it has still been, I mean, one more specific time, if I get to spend some time, I would go to library with not a preconceived notion of which book to study. Any book would be as good.
Fantastic. 8, 9 years, and that's a long number of years associated with books, and the romance of books has only increased for you by the time, isn't it? So tell me, how did reading help you evolve as a leader? How did it contribute in your leadership journey?
That's a great question, Rajiv. I would think that life is too short just to learn from your experiences. So you learn from others as well through books. And books are like people too, I guess. Whenever you need one, they come into your life. So if I have to look at how the books have evolved me as leaders or during my leadership journey, what I would say is that we can look at 3 phases exactly. Like when I said I have started very early reading through the books, those phases probably are not as distinct as what I think it comes to my mind, but divide that, they will be in 3 phases. The first will be more of a self-discovery, where through the books, you mirror who you are or who you are not. Books like, say, or the authors of Daniel Goleman, Malcolm Gladwell, Eric Burns. It also adds to some fictional stories like Paulo Coelho, then Salman Rushdie's of the world.
Correct.
They all build who you are. And that, I would say, would be the first phase of self-discovery, knowing about yourself. Then gradually, if we move to the second, it's more looks like connecting those ideas. No man is an island. So how do we get to know is that what were those ideas which came in? How does it work in world? And that's where the autobiographies of all the business leaders and different people and political leaders and the state and philosophers, like Greek philosophies, how does the world work? That would be more of like connecting those ideas, and some of the more modern ones like Alvin Toffler of the world, Geoff Capra, etc. That I would say is the second phase.
Beautiful.
And the third phase is more of a paying it forward. Of course, it's not completed yet. It's about those ideas of how do you accumulate this cumulative experience, how do you pay it forward, how do you influence people, how do you ensure getting things done, basically, where you try to make the whole is greater than sum of its parts. And that's where this book, John Maxwell's books, Jim Collins, Stephen Covey, etc., come into play, which I would say that's the third phase. I think, does that kind of give you a glimpse of my...
Of course. In fact, I would definitely want to tell you that many leaders have come on this event already, and you are here today. But I love the way you kind of put that journey into three phases. And you know what? It categorically demarcates the different learnings that you get out of these phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 that you beautifully said. I think that's a great articulation. So thank you so much for that. That brings me to the next question. So many books you spoke about across these three phases. Why this particular book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, ended up being one of the most, or one of the top inspiring books for you? What did Marshall do to you?
So yeah, that's again interesting. This is one of the top books which influence, I think, most of the leaders. I would say it's the river of flowing water is fresh, whereas pond water gets stale.
Right.
And that's exactly is the synopsis of this book, where what has worked in past, not necessarily what is going to work in future. In our times, like be it COVID or the future of work, which is our business, both you and I. These what worked in the past, it's not good enough to say that will equip you to kind of be successful in the future. And that essence is very nicely brought in this book, and it keeps us reminding us to sharpen our saw and ensure, as we call out, to get more arrows in your quiver, so that it is relevant. And that's why I think whichever phase I am in, this book always reminds me to be forward focused, ensuring that you kind of get your skill up to date.
Absolutely. I think one of the marvelous books written by Marshall, and he definitely occupies one of the top 3 coaches in the world, and his ability to articulate a human mind and behavior is fabulous. You rightly said this book has helped so many of them. I have lost count of how many times I've read it, because every time I go into a new assignment or a new job or a new word, I would pick up a couple of pages and figure out, how does this mirage of success play in my life? Where am I currently? Am I getting stuck to any of those boxes of beliefs? I would always read. So tell me, over your journey of leadership, you also as a human being has evolved. You also have your own temptations. You have your own gravities pulling you down. It takes a great effort to thrust yourself out of those pulls, right? How did you manage working on the mirage of success that Marshall beautifully talks about, the 4 beliefs of, I have succeeded, I will succeed, I choose to succeed? It must have pulled you also sometimes. How did you work on it?
So that's what Marshall brings out very clearly, that these 4 key beliefs actually helps all of us to become successful. At the same time, each can make it tough for us to change. And that's called the paradox of success. Now, with these 4, say I have succeeded, I can succeed, I will succeed, I choose to succeed, are basically saying that we have the skill, confidence, motivation, and the free choice to succeed. That makes us superstitious.
Lovely.
That says that what worked in the past would work now. And this belief that carried us here, holding us back for our quest to go there.
Right, right.
So that concept occurs to us, most of us, very naturally, because that's tested and proven, and that's as we say.
Yeah.
Whereas I have done in what I did in my journey is that I have got this two very simple assumptions which I check when I'm doing something new.
Okay.
Is the first one is, am I being superstitious that it has worked in past and that's why it will work now? So am I looking at the right picture?
Right.
In my past and saying this has worked out well. That gives me a good idea about looking at the things as they are. And the second simple way to look at it is look at yourself, not just the or the fact or the world. Is the success happening because of my behavior or in spite of my behavior?
Lovely. I love that way you said it. Right.
And both of them would kind of get you to focus on what is relevant today and what to do for tomorrow.
Well, that's beautifully articulated. In fact, thank you for bringing that new paradigm. It makes you superstitious. In fact, I had not used the word superstitious. I think I had understood it in my head, but the right word is it makes you superstitious. You're so right in saying this, actually making me think. You're true. So what is that one advice to the budding leaders that you would want to give? They would also go through those cycles of belief, right?
So I think these two ways are to check the assumptions to ensure that they don't go through those cycles. And for budding leaders, somebody who is young and upcoming, you have picked up the theme very well. Today's readers, tomorrow's leaders. So read what?
Read out, yeah.
And that would ensure that you are learning from other people's experiences as well. So.
Very well said. Very, very well said. So let's dive a little more into what Marshall is talking in this book, right? The attempt is in the next 40 minutes, a couple of things that people can pick up and prod them to go and read the book. It'll give you far more learning for them. He's also a great fan of Peter Drucker, like all of us are. And this statement of Peter is very famous. All of us have heard it multiple times. Let me put it across here once again that he says we all spend enough time in telling leaders what to do. We don't spend enough time in telling them what stop to do. In our learning, we always do the stop to do, and continue doing as one of the activities and workshops and other things, right? We have done it for many, many years. I always thought start to do and continue was very important. Stop also was important. But here, stop seems to be significant. So I have two questions. Why is stopping so important for a successful leader like you? And what was that one or two thing that you stopped that made the version 2 of you?
So interesting question. And again, as I said, that it's a phase thing. It's not only about us, it's about the society as well.
Yeah.
Now, if you would see that any recognition and reward system in the society or in the organization are totally geared to acknowledge the doing of something. We get credit for doing something. We rarely get credit of ceasing to do something which is bad. Right? So, yeah, they are the different side of the same coin.
Yeah.
So this is how we have been geared. And that's why in all our leadership journey, we should also be cognizant of the fact that we have to stop doing things stopping us from being successful.
Right.
It's not just about doing more and more things, and how difficult it could be once you have identified that what is stopping us to stop action.
Correct.
Yeah. And don't wait for recognition, because recognition will not come that quickly. It will only you who would notice first that stop, but eventually it would come.
Right.
Now, you know, I'm in people function, and I tell my team this very clearly, specifically the recruitment teams. And all the research have proven this, the fact as well, that a bad hire is very costly to the organization.
Correct.
So I always tell them that don't worry about the fact that you have not hired somebody. Now, a no hire is far, far much better than a bad hire.
I agree.
Action is an action as well, or the outcome out there. Yeah. So that I would think is one example where very aptly talks about in people function that what is the implication of doing a bad hire. So stop it if you don't, if you are not comfortable for whatever reason to go ahead hire. Now, personally, some years back when I was getting into managing large teams across countries, etc., I had this urge of being present everywhere at once. Like to be part either through travel or through meetings or being there in all the important events. The thought process in my mind was primarily to ensure that I am able to support the team. They see that.
And you don't want to miss any input and data coming to you from the environment, right?
Exactly. However, that always came with cost, and the cost was toll on myself because you can't be in 12 or 13 countries in APAC at one time. And the second was about the empowerment of the people, because the country heads of HR will probably feel that they would not be able to act as they are supposed to act. So I said, this is a classic case where I need to stop doing that.
Beautiful example, right?
And I stopped doing it. And the advantage is now I have I think we have grown over years and across organization. I think now I empower my teams much more. I have a higher trust from the team as well. They own up. So I think that example is a great one.
I mean, I agree.
We should stop.
In fact, I'm thinking as you're speaking, Kumar, is we talk about a positive result when a leader starts doing something. Now, what you just articulated is a positive result that happened because of something that you stopped. The moment you stopped traveling, the result was empowerment and accountability on the shoulders of your people reporting you. Direct, not indirect, direct. I mean, without even telling the message is aptly clear. I am going to support you from back. I think that was so right. Fantastic. All right, so let me add a question linking to this. You said you want to be there everywhere. That's because there's also a temptation in leaders tendency to add value every time. And I have done it. I know it. You are managing one country, I've managed 7 countries, so I know it. How do leaders stop this tendency to add value? And I'll complete the question with the last statement. Isn't it natural, Kumar, because we have a good amount of experience on our sleeves? Are we not there to add value there?
Absolutely, that sometimes the situation requires you to add values or put your color on the stuff which is going around. But what Marshall has talked about this is that the insistent urge of adding value every time. And that trait would derail any leader very quickly.
Why do you say that?
And the reason is because with our experience, we may improve the content by 5%.
Okay.
But reduce the commitment of that individual by 50%.
Yeah.
So trying to add that value every time might not help, but what as a leader, what we might need to require is that when they are not clear about something or they are stuck, the time when you bring your own experience and add into their ideas.
Correct.
So that the their ideas, and so that they see you as a facilitator, somebody who is trying to help them out to reach their outcome, and which is fantastic because that even enhances their engagement and empowerment.
Yeah, and they don't see it as instructions.
Yeah, and they don't see that as instruction. It's part of the team together, and we reach the best outcome. So I think that's what we need to keep in mind, that even though sometimes you reach those solutions or outcome much faster, you need to keep in mind that how does it come out as a overall adds to the benefit rather than takes away from it.
So, yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question which may be a little tough. All right.
Yeah. Ask me all the tough questions.
today, as a person running leadership interventions for organizations and coaching leaders and others, maybe I'm able to arrest that temptation in me. Now, when I was a budding leader, the thought would get converted to a word, and word would just want to pop out of my lip. And I would like, no, don't come out. I would kind of, no. It was so tough, isn't it, Kumar? Because there is a stronger thrust ki kuch batana chahta hu. So how does a budding leader do that? I mean, you are a seasoned leader today, you're able to do that and not add value every time. But a budding leader would always have a temptation to do that because there's a need of, I want to prove myself, I want to show myself. How do they do it? Could you help them with 1 or 2 tips?
Excellent point. I'll give you an example of, and I understand absolutely you want to do it quick and you want to kind of put your stamp on the issue.
Yeah.
But let's take a leaf out of consultants. HR consultants to start with, because that you and I both will identify.
Yeah.
I mean, and they don't start giving solutions. They define the problems with you.
Right.
Organization. And while they are defining those problems, that's their job. They would know the solutions and they can kind of give you the tailor-made solution in the first meeting itself. But do you think that would be the successful way to do things? The answer is absolutely no.
Correct.
What they do is that they will bring on that journey of defining the problem, ensuring that the complexity of the problem is well understood, stakeholder engagement is required, and then they come out with the solution. And that takes a lots of deliberation. Deliberation is the word.
Correct.
As a young budding leader, nobody expects you to come out with a solution then and there. And I landed up in trouble sometimes because of that, because you get into solution mode faster than the stakeholder requires you to be. So I think deliberation is the key word out there. If you are talking about that solution and trying to put that across, deliberate. There is no hurry. You will get the opportunity to kind of put your stamp in and think about the consultants. If you remember that, it would be easier to decide how do you want to put your solution ahead and not be seen as adding value or tinkering right at the start.
Good. So budding leaders listening to Kumar has a great input. I think whenever you are in a temptation to give solutions, arrest that, wear the cap of a consultant, get into a deliberative mode. I think that's the best way to stop this temptation to add value every time, and people will see you as a far better leader and acceptable leader. So thanks a lot, Kumar, for that input.
Thank you.
I know I read a very powerful statement many years back which said, people love to live in the world that they believe they have created. Which is what we are talking about. I thought that was a very marvelous and a powerful statement. Which is all about arresting the temptation to add value, because when you said their ideas, that's exactly the statement. Their ideas, their world that they think they have created, you have only gone in and given 1 or 2 additional tips. That's all.
Sure.
Lovely. All right, so let me take you to the next question that I have, which I've written here, which is very powerful. 4 things that Marshall talks about for leaders. All right, clearly communicating a vision, treats people with respect, solicits contrary opinions, encourages other people's ideas. Exclusively 4 different ones, though they may seem to have a connection. So my question to you, Kumar, is which are the 2 that you would want to pick, which you surely know through your leadership journey people have always acknowledged, recognized, and respected you for? Which are those two?
Okay, this is interesting because all four are important ingredients to build a positive, powerful, progressive culture in the organizations. So yeah, if you are missing on one and doing others more, it still can derail that culture. However, if you ask me to pick only two, or these two I do more than the other.
Environment has always seen, irrespective of those 6 organizations, 5 countries, industry that you've worked, people have always seen this coming out of you in every occasion, consistently, constantly, and continuously.
Okay, excellent. So that would be like the visible sides of it. So I think I believe that clearly communicating a vision is very important. The goal post should be clear.
Right.
Then you have that opportunity to take that tackle, have room to maneuver, and finally, in any way, as a team, we can reach out to that goal post.
Right.
If people don't know where they need to kick the goal, you will not reach anywhere. So I think as an organization, as a leaders, as a team leads, that's one thing which always be very clear about, because if you don't know where you are going, you will end up nowhere. So I would choose that as the first. And the second one I would think is encourage other people ideas.
Sure.
And the reason is very simple. Like I see in Singapore, you have got these tall buildings, like every building is almost 30th floor and above. And I see the symmetry and beauty in them and think, if I had to make that building, it would take probably 1,000 years for me to just kind of get that structure up, and it would not be as symmetrical as it is, even though I know some of the mathematics behind it. Now, that's exactly what we need to do in organizations as well. Bring people together, create an atmosphere where everybody, whoever they are and whatever expertise they bring, have the ability to, or are encouraged to bring their ideas on the table.
Lovely.
If we don't, we will not make any organization, country, or society flourish.
Beautiful.
That's why we have to ensure that we encourage varied source of ideas. Whatever inventions and discoveries which we do today, that's not done alone. We have stood on the shoulders of giants to come out. And that's why it's very important to keep that momentum up in the organizations and society.
Absolutely, because none of us are like the Martian, all alone in Mars. We are unfortunately on planet Earth. And we have people around who are equally wise and wiser than us. So
absolutely,
it's all about multiple minds coming together and creating. Look at the lovely tower that you see behind you, right? This was not created by one man. He had a team who had to do this for him, right? Or else this marvel would have never been. I'm talking from India, you're talking from Singapore, but what I see behind you is the Eiffel Tower. I think every marvel has been, like you rightly said, with multiple minds. But you and me having a conversation also is 2 minds coming together to help the budding leaders to go back and pick up this lovely habit of reading books. You have seen the benefit in your life. I have seen the benefit in my life. That has become a business model for me. So both of us are doing good by helping others to probably take that path so that they can make a delta in their own journey of leadership, isn't it? I think it's always about, thank you for that, being that one more mind in this particular event. Kumar, I completely appreciate and acknowledge this as the founder of my organization. Tell me something in the current world where I don't want to sound generalizing, but I would still want to put this across. From the time that we grew as leaders, and today the young leaders who come out and they reach a certain position quickly, there is some element of how do I put it? It's very impersonal that I see in the corporate world. I think it was a little more.
Sorry, what impersonal?
Impersonal. That is between people interaction is impersonal. I think it was a little more personal when we kind of started our journey. If you would agree with what I'm saying, right? So in this kind of an impersonal world as well, Marshall still talks about this powerful thing called the magic move, and he calls it the need for leaders to apologize. Why do you think the budding leaders should pick up this as a very fundamental skill?
It's a magic move, surely, when your spouse is cross with you, and it doesn't matter who is right and wrong. So in corporate world as well, it more or less works in the same way.
Yeah.
Even though it's impersonal, even though if you are trying to, how do I put it? If you are trying to assuage the ego, the question is not who is right and who is wrong, makes people more receptive of your ideas. And I mean, I had quite a few examples on this. Like, it's not about apologizing, it's about coming at the same level, saying, I understand where you come from.
Yeah.
So even though we are on a phone in like 30,000 kilometers apart, or you are presenting on Zoom or Skype or any other medium, basically we are saying that, look, I'm not coming from a higher plane. We are trying to bring this together.
Correct.
And which is why this becomes a magic move.
Right.
I would give an example, actually, that will make it more kind of...
Please. I think it's important for the budding leaders to know this.
So in one of the organization, we introduced rating less performance appraisal.
Okay.
Which by that time, few years back, was acceptable. Few of the progressive organization has already done it. But when I brought to this senior stakeholder of mine, his point of view was, if there are no ratings, how do we even talk performance?
Correct.
And for that, I had reams and reams of logic and argument stuff that why this is much better way of doing things, why it will bring more engagement, etc., etc. But it wasn't getting through.
Right.
And we ended up the meeting saying we have to have more discussion on this. And the next time when I went in that discussion, I did think through that what was that which was not working. Some of those was very obvious. Is it very obvious to me because I am in people function?
Correct.
And that was not kind of gelling well with me, because we are in people function, but the business leaders are also managing people day in and day out.
Yeah.
Also get it. So I started my next meeting with saying that now I understand that I think that I was going more pedantic on why it works. I'm sorry for that. Let's start again with saying, what problem do you see this in implementing this? And this worked like a charm. Yeah. And the arguments remained the same, but the outcome was totally different.
Absolutely.
And that happens when people become more receptive and realize that the challenge is not about saying about the arguments, but it's about the way this has been brought in. So it's very easy and straightforward and sincere way to do it as well.
Lovely. In fact, what you said makes a lot of sense, Kumar, because in the second meeting, when you started with an apology, you were actually you were shifting yourself from a plane where in the first meeting you were talking as an HR guy saying, let me tell you why this will work. And you moved into the second meeting saying, leave that aside. I would like to hear and understand why you think it will not work for you. So you kind of went into their world, and they obviously were more receptive, isn't it?
Yeah, well put. That's exactly.
I think that shift fundamentally made the magic, and the outcome was different. Which also takes us to the next question, which is about listening as a very important thing that he talks about. You listened very well in the second meeting. I'm not saying you did in the first one, but probably you were more in a listening mode because you wanted to understand why are they saying this won't work for the organization, and you would want to give answers. And Marshall says the near greats and greats, the difference is just one thing called listening.
Sorry, listening. The difference is listening. Okay.
What's your take?
So, look, if you take out the comprehension bit, listening, not listening, and half listening is very clearly a verb. It
Yeah.
has connotations. It's an action. You either do it or you don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
So if you don't do listening, I have heard a lots of research on this, but it boils down to a very simple thing. If you are in habit of not listening, um, there is nothing else which can help you. It's just practice and discipline to get into listening mode. And this is much more near to my heart because I was also inflicted with this problem some time back. And the reason is simple, that the jobs which we do and the individuals which we are, I am very oriented person and try to kind of look for solutions because that's what I get paid for. But what happens in this is that after a while, because you have got some experience, you realize that, oh, I probably understand that which genre of problem we are talking about. And it becomes a half listening.
Correct.
You listen and I say, oh, I know something about this and can we work this out? That was a rude awakening for me when one of my senior stakeholders pointed this out to me, saying that I don't respect her as much as she does to me because I am too quick to give solutions.
Wow. Okay.
And I thought through and I said, okay, the problem was listening.
Right.
And so as I said that I took my own medicine and decided to bring that discipline. And I did that in a very formal setup. I went ahead, volunteer for a protege movement as a mentor for women who are working in their careers to break their glass ceiling.
Right.
How it helped me was that there was no pressure on me to drive those conversations, so I can listen, understand. Also, it was up to the mentee to get to the outcome which they want.
Right.
And I need to assist them. So in that case also, I was in no way to give a solution. And that was a great exercise in self-restraint. Sometimes I wanted to quickly jump into that, but I did that for close to 4 years. But the benefit started 6 months later itself, where I was hearing more, I was listening more, I was reading between the lines, as they call it, to understand that what was said and what was unsaid.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that approach was that most of the times we'll be amazed that themselves can come out with the solutions, and they easily accept, as we were talking about your earlier point, when they are empowered, when they accept in their own world, they're much easier to kind of work on it and follow that. So that would be one example which stands to my mind.
Absolutely. For me, I've been in this space for so long. I've always realized that, you love to connect with people who listen, right? Because every human being wants to be listened than listen, right? Every human being wants to be listened to. I would love somebody listen to me for a long time, right? I think it's a very fundamental skill, but unfortunately one of the most known yet ignored skills by very many senior leaders. In fact, recently I was talking to somebody who was a senior vice president level, and we had a board discussion. The CEO was sitting there, which I was sitting in the boardroom, and I was making a presentation about work that we started for the organization. They were into the retail space in India. This man just wasn't listening, and he was coming with all that experience of his. And I told him, what? These are 1, 2, 3 behaviors that you're displaying, which tells me that you're not listening. He said, leave the discussions aside, Rajiv. Let's focus on me for a moment. Did I do these behaviors? I said, yes. I said this, you did this. I said this, you did this, which tells me you're not listening. He said, I need to talk to you for an hour to understand what am I doing more to come across as a bad listener. It was so lovely of him to acknowledge that, right? Not many know कि हम ये कर रहे हैं जिसके कारण I come across as a bad listener. Yeah, I think it's a great point. Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to take you to the last question. Tell me one non-negotiable leadership quality of yours that you have always displayed and followed in life. that has brought you here and that will take you where you want to go also?
So that will be the antithesis of the book. It says that what brought you here would not take you there. But in my context, I think curiosity has killed the cat. But in my case, it has always worked in my favor. Okay. So curious has always worked for me. It started with the quest of why do we do what we do.
Lovely.
Into human resources. And now when I look at the problems and look at the different scenarios, I try to be curious about them. I try to understand what's happening. Let's take a less traded path on that. And that helps me come out with out-of-box solutions. Sometimes it's much more easier to introduce them. So I think that has something which has stayed with me. Mm-hmm. That perspective of looking curiously to the things which might be even common phenomena in the organization space. And I think that would take me there as well, at least at one. Because what it does is that it helps me in strategizing smartly, executing effectively, and building those strong relationships.
Beautiful.
So it works on the system and it works on the individuals as well.
Would that also be a strong advice as we close the session for the budding leaders to always stay curious?
I think, and that's what the books are for. If you are curious, you are more involved, you are more engaged, and you are able to see things which, if you are not curious, you will be able to miss. So absolutely, unless we are curious about the situation or people, will not get the best out of it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was lovely talking with you, Kumar. I'll close with the last question. How was your experience being part of this Leaders and Libraries event?
Since you have been listening so patiently to everything I said, it was amazing.
Lovely articulated there.
Look, it has been fantastic. I think you guys are doing a great job bringing leaders and libraries together. The concept is simple yet powerful. So it's great to talk something about. I'm a bibliophile, and if you gave me the opportunity to talk about this book and many others, it's always pleasant. So yeah, it has been a great experience.
Lovely. Thank you for coming in and putting across a couple of thoughts that Marshall has expanded and elaborated in the book in this 45 minutes of time that we chatted. I'm hopeful that this will prod those budding leaders to pick up that one fundamental habit of reading, which is non-negotiably one of the successful tools for all leaders. And all successful leaders that I have met, which you would agree, have all been readers. I'm yet to find a leader who doesn't read. So it's a fundamental skill. So thank you so much for being here, making the budding leaders to think and go and pick up this book to start with if they haven't. Or if this book is on the table and they've been dusting it for the last 6 months, let them go and pick it up and start reading. It's done magic to you, it's done magic to me, it's done magic to many, many people. I'm sure to do for those budding leaders as well. So thank you so much for coming in once again, Kumar. Thank you for articulating your points. Love the interaction. I'll see you soon.
Same here. Thank you, Rajiv, and have a great week ahead. And pleasure was all mine. Thank you very much.
Same to you. Thank you so much. Bye.